Alright guys, in this vehicle specific video we're going to do a 2014 Ford Transit Connect. We're going to be doing the two front doors on this, which includes the front quarter glass window. This quarter glass window is very specific on this car. It's not like any other car because it's so tight, and we're going to go over the details of how to get that tint in there between the gasket and the glass. But let's get right to the outside prep, and then followed by tricking the door. So let's trick the door first, just like any Ford and GM vehicle. Trick that latch to get rid of the chime noise. I'm going to go ahead with the outside prep really quick, and then we'll take the door panel off so that we have easy access. Alright, so the door panel removal on this Transit or this van is very easy. You're going to have this piece of plastic here. You can have the whole handle assembly, and you're going to see this separate piece of plastic down here. You could take a hook tool or the gasket jamming stick and just pry this out. That plastic comes out, and then you have two Torx tips there. And then you have the plastic behind the door handle. You can see right here, we're going to stick the hook tool and pop that out. And the Torx tip we're going to use is a T20. So a T20 Torx tip for all three screws. And then we're not going to pull from the bottom first. We're only going to take this portion of the door panel off. You can see there's another cover here where there's another screw, so we're not going to pull past that section. We just want to get easy access to this quarter glass window and be able to pull out the weather stripping, because you can see the door panel leans against the quarter window here, and we want to be able to tuck it behind the gasket there. So we'll go ahead and start by pulling on the top, the front, popping it back, and we just want to release the one clip that's right at the top here. And now we can grab the gasket or the weather stripping, pull that up and out. And now we have enough room to work in the area here and bottom load the door window. So let's go ahead with the quick inside prep, and then we'll get to laying out the bulk material. Now when we prep the quarter glass window, you're going to do the same razor blading technique. But after we do this, we're going to want to pay close attention to the outside where the gasket meets the glass, and we're going to use an OFA blade to clean between the gasket and the glass, because you'll see there will be some rubber deposits where the glass hits the gasket, which is right here on the inside, and then you have the gasket protruding over the glass here. We're going to take it out about 1.5 inches and put pressure on it on an angle so you don't cut the gasket. You're only leaning on the glass. And we're going to slide it up, and you can see right here, you can see the gasket deposit on the glass itself. We want to try to clean that off as much as possible. You're not going to see it on the inside because the gasket's still going to be leaning against the glass, which has the tint on it already after you install it, but you want to get that bond from the gasket off of the glass so it's not sticking when you go to install. And you can see the residue that's left on the glass from the gasket. Try to clean that off as much as possible. Now doing that process does one of two things. Like I said, it removes that gasket residue from the glass, and it also loosens the connection between the gasket and the glass, because the looser that is, the easier it's going to be to get the tint to slide into there. And we're going to do one more step to make sure it's a little bit easier. We're going to take the gasket jamming stick with the blue huck towel, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with the razor blade, just to loosen it up a bit and do a little bit more cleaning. It's going to be a little tough, but it's necessary to get an easier install. If I had to rate this quarter glass from a 1 to a 10, 1 being the easiest and 10 being the hardest, it's definitely one of the hardest quarter glasses you will ever do. And then one more step, we'll take our Easy Reach. We're going to open it up and we're going to soak it with soapy water. Let's give that a rinse and do a quick squeegee with the 3.5 inch. Now that we have that all cleaned up, let's lay out the bulk material. You can get away with a 20-inch roll on this window, I believe. Measure it to, if you're doing this, measure it just to make sure. But I'm going to use a 40-inch roll sideways because I could do the whole door with it, with a door roll down window, and I can do the quarter glass with the excess material. So let's go ahead and lay that out. So now that we've got that laid out, we don't have a bottom, we don't have a straight edge here. It is fairly straight, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to overhang it, just because it is close enough to being straight, and it's going to be behind the weather stripping, so that's going to be dropped down below the window. We're going to overhang it about a 1/2 inch and mount it in place really quick. And I'll show you guys on the inside really quick. You can see how this plastic curves up, and on the inside it's exposed. So we're not going to trim this edge right here. We're going to leave it straight so that it can continue behind the panel here, and you won't have that line on the inside when you look at it. So we're going to leave that straight across the bottom, and we're going to start just like any other vehicle, cut the front edge first, and then we're going to shift it forward. Cutting some extra material off here. And then we'll go ahead and release this squeegee mount and shift it forward about 1/4 inch. Maybe a little bit more than 1/4. And then we'll check our overhang on the bottom, make sure that's still even. And go ahead and mount it back in place. So now we're going to cut the back edge. And we're going to start from about 1/4 inch above this curve here. So we're going to start about right here and move our way up to the top before it curves. You don't want to cut any curves on the back edges ever. Tear that away. So now that we have the front edge cut, shifted forward, the bottom's overhanging, and we cut the back already, we're going to roll it down and cut the top edge. You want to make sure that the tint's not sticking to the top painted area. You can go ahead and mount the top in place and cut the top just like any other vehicle. On the back edge here, there's a little curve. You want to make sure you continue with that, and we're going to finish that off when we do the final trimming cuts, which we'll do right now. So we're going to take a straight edge like the Gray Lidco or the gold Teflon card, and we'll just gradually continue these continuations. This is the back edge that has that curve. The top edge. Front top. And the bottom front. I'm going to flip this over to continue the top radiuses. So with the front edge, we're going to do a continuation of the top edge of the glass. And then that back edge will continue that radius. So now we're ready to mount this in place, install it. Do a spray squeegee spray and then bottom load this into place. Remember, always put the front edge in first when you're bottom loading. Try to avoid any creases or bubbles like so. Then gradually get the back corner in. You're going to fold the middle a little bit. And very carefully work it into place. Making sure you line up that back radius so it's very even across the top and tight. Then we'll mount it in place and roll it up, take it from there. Push at our top with the heat gun. We'll go ahead and roll this up. And you can see here the bottom edge covers this entire area. Most of the time tinters will cut along this and you'll have a tint edge here, which is very unsatisfying to me. To have the full continuation, it just looks so much better. So I'm going to check this bottom corner here. You can see it's bunched up a little bit because it was dry. I'm going to wiggle it around a little, smooth it out, and it's ready to squeegee. And some of you guys may be saying, hey, you applied the tint sideways, you can't shrink it that way. I'm going to show you guys how to shrink fingers sideways. It doesn't really shrink, but the whole idea here is to heat it up enough for the glue to stick and it'll stay. So if you were to shrink this, we would heat it up until it gets squiggly and then push it down. We're going to keep the heat further away, like this, about a foot away. Get a little bit close until it moves a little bit. You'll see it does more of a pinching action than it does squiggly, but you want to heat this before it gets too hot at all. So heat it up a little, try to move it around. The whole idea is to not shrink the same finger, and you want to move it to a new position. And you can see that stayed down. It heated up the glue enough for it to stick in place, and that will stay there permanently. Now, if that were a bigger finger, what you could do is heat it from the outside, and that'll get it to stick as well, heating up the glass from the outside. All right, now let's move on to the quarter glass window. We're gonna go ahead and cut a piece for this, and we're gonna cut that right to the edge, just like we would with any other rubber edged gasket quarter glass window. And then we'll go to the inside, and I'll show you guys how difficult this is to install and the proper way to handle it. You just gotta have patience. So let's lay out that bulk material. We can go ahead and use this piece for both sides. So I'll lay this out roughly, cut the excess off. The first thing you want to do is have all sides overlapping, but you want to have the bottom overlapping as little as possible to make it easier to cut. Because if you have too much material down here, it'll get scrunched up. So we have all overlapping with the bottom overlapping as little as possible. We'll squeegee mount that in place as much as possible. We don't want this to move while we're cutting it, but you don't want to squeegee too much into the sides because you could crease the material. So we're going to go ahead and cut this bottom edge first. We're going to do no blade, push it in, and then push the blade out, only a click or two on a 45-degree angle. Rip that material away. And then we're going to go up the front edge and try to continue around the radius across the top. Rip that away. And then we'll go up the back edge. Starting from the bottom, push the blade out. And then we have a really nice rough cut here. And then we'll pop the material off. Check the edges. And this actually came out, this is probably one of the best cuts that I've ever done on one of these. Usually when you do an edge and you go around the corner, you'll get a slight crease in the material, and when you lay that down, you'll get that'll end up sticking up. But this is all nice and smooth, and this is exactly how it should be. So we're going to go ahead and round out the corners here. So we'll grab that bottom corner, round that out nicely. You don't want to make it too big of a round because you don't want a light gap. Although we are going to have some extra material because there's so much room to work with on this quarter window. And then the top edge you want to make slightly larger. And we are ready to install this. So we're going to mount this onto this window so that we can peel the release liner here. You can go over it again with the Easy Reach and just jam some water in there, open it up and spray water in there. You want to get this as wet as possible. Just so you know, when you do this with your Easy Reach, you are going to probably ruin it. So always have another one on hand. Wipe after each stroke. We'll lubricate it up again. Don't be scared to use too much water because this quarter glass is going to need it. Peel that edge, spray it up, and then we'll grab it and go inside with it. The whole idea here is to get it to lay behind the gaskets as best as possible. So we're going to lay it in place, try to get into the front edge, top edge, pulling the gasket away, just slowly working it into place. It will go behind because we did lubricate it up nicely. And then we get to the bottom edge in here, you're going to want to pull this gasket away. It is going to be very tight on the back edge, so you might want to start with the front edge. And just get that to lay down in there. Check it from the outside. You do have to work pretty quick on this quarter glass window because once it starts to tack, it's not going to move at all. Where it is, it's where it's going to be. If it's in the wrong position, you'll have to rip it off and cut a new one. So we can go ahead and start squeezing this out. This is okay, this bulk of material. We'll get the Easy Reach in there and get it to lay behind the gasket like the rest of the tint is. If the bottom is not behind the gasket yet, don't worry about that yet. Get the rest of the material to lay down and then you can go back to that. Take our Easy Reach, pull that gasket away, lays in there nicely. I'm going to grab a new Easy Reach to push that in. So go from the top, very carefully and gradually push it into place. Pushing out that bottom. Definitely charge extra on this vehicle because you're going to go through some Easy Reaches, enough to cover the cost of a couple of them. If you can't get this material to lay down here, you may have to do some trimming. I would personally let that sit for a little bit, and then I'll go and push it out with the gray lid coat card and then trim the excess material. So as of right now, this window is good. I'm going to let that sit while I do the other side. I'll quickly show you guys the reinstallation of the gasket. But the main tip with this quarter window is you're going to want to heat it up from the outside and make sure there's no water pushing down, creating water fingers, because the last thing you want is the customer to leave and they have a water finger drooping down the middle of the window. So always heat it from the inside and the outside before you go and let the car leave. And just like I said with this, if you get this bubble down here, I'll show you guys. We'll heat it up, push it with the gray lid co, and then we'll cut the excess material off, because on certain models, it's just the way that they're made. Everyone's a little bit different. Some will be tighter than others, and you won't be able to get it behind that gasket there because it's just so compressed. So if you heat it from the outside, what we're doing is evaporating the water, exposing the glue, and getting it to just stick with the glue. You see that sticks down very nicely. You see a couple imperfections here. We'll go ahead and just do a little fine trimming there. There's only a little sliver of material that didn't get behind the gasket, so that's good. We'll take the weather stripping, install the front edge first on the track, pop it down into place, and we'll make sure our clips are lined up. Smack those back into place. We'll take our T20s, 2 silver ones on the bottom. Don't overspin them. Reinstall this plastic just by lining the clips up into place and giving it a smack. And this plastic cover that's behind the handle, this little prong here has to go in first in the front, and then the back lays down. And then of course you're going to want to wipe the door panel down. And of course the final step is untricking the latch to make sure the door can close. Obviously simultaneously pulling the door handle and releasing that latch there, making sure the door is unlocked. And that is how you tint a 2015 Ford Transit Connect with the extremely hard quarter glass windows. Take your time with that. My main tip is just be patient and get as much water between that gasket and the glass as much as possible. And I'll see you guys in the next video.